The movie starts with a little boy named Nabin Chandra Das peeking at a sweet shop where the owner is making variety of sweets. And at the same time he hears a group of travelers singing a song. He immediately joins the group and starts singing alongside them. At last, after their short performance is over, the head of the travelers group asks Nabin to provide him with something just like the other people did. However, Nabin has nothing to offer, hence he walks aside, grabs a lump of wet soil, and makes a ball out of it. He then rushes to the leader and hands him the ball. Surprisingly, the leader becomes happy and blesses Nabin by saying he was born to feed people. The movie fast forwards by several years, and now Nabin is a fully grown man preparing food for a family function at his uncle Nitin's house because Nabin's father died at an early age. He and his mother have been living with Nabin's uncle and his family. Nabin makes a unique delicacy during the family function and all of the guests loved it. They approach Nitin and praise the chef who prepared the dish and also wish to meet and give him a tip. However, the cunning man introduces someone else as the chef and gives him full credit for the food. This makes Nabin really angry, but he can do nothing but stare at his uncle without uttering a word. After the function is over, when Nabin confronts his uncle about why he did so, Nitin replies that he doesn't want his nephew to be recognized as a person who makes food for others. Hearing this, Nabin gets really angry and says that he loves to cook and wants to become a confectioner. Hearing this, Nitin gets furious and said that no one in family has become a confectioner because it's a low-profile job, and if Nabin dares to defy him, then he and his mother will have to cut all ties with the family. After hearing this, Nabin alone leaves his uncle's house. After some days, Nabin finds a job at a sweet shop which was owned by a very arrogant guy named Kalidas. Nabin becomes very excited to work alongside other confectioners Mahesh and Hemant. However, Kalidas does not let him get involved in preparing sweets and rather asks him to work as a helper and look after the customers. During his work, Nabin closely looks at Hemant making a sweet dish and suggests he put raisins in it to increase its flavor. Hemant refuses to do so, but Mahesh supports him and urges Nabin to do whatever experiments he wants. Later that, when Nabin is looking after the shop, a beautiful girl Kiradmani Devi comes running to the shop and hides behind a wooden rack. Surprised by the behavior, Nabin inquires what she's doing there, and Kiradmani replies that she's playing hide and seek with his brother. Hearing this, Nabin asks her to leave as this was no place to leave. Hearing this, Kiradmani says that she is a customer and Nabin should the tastiest sweets they have. Nabin gets excited and starts bringing dishes one by one. Kiradmani tries all the dishes and says she doesn't like any of these. Unaware that it was Kiradmani's plan to eat sweets for free, Nabin went out to look for Kiradmani's brother and she cleverly exits the place. When Kalidas appear on the scene and gets to know that a girl tried 16 sweets and didn't pay a single dime, he gets furious at Nabin and threatens that if he doesn't catch the girl and get their money back, he will deduct the money from his salary. Upset, Nabin walks out to search for Kiradmani and finds her playing with her friends, but as soon as she spots Nabin coming her way, she starts running and enters her house. Nabin also follows her inside and meets her mother. He then explains the entire ordeal to the woman and eventually retrieves the money from her. Delighted to have gotten the money, Nabin decides to return. But as soon as he steps out of the house, Kiradmani pulls him aside. She bites his hand, takes her money back, and complains about the sweets. Finally, she agrees to pay Nabin the money only if he makes a sweet dish. As per her request, she demands Nabin to make a white and round dish that should melt as soon as she puts it in her mouth, and gives it a name Rosogolla. Eager to experiment with his dish, Nabin agrees with her request and walks away. Next day, Nabin asks for some cottage cheese and sugar from Mahesh and starts preparing the dish as described by Kiradmani. He tries to make a round ball with a cottage cheese, but as soon as he tries to fry the balls, they tear apart into pieces. While doing this, he wastes a lot of cheese and oil. In the afternoon, Kalidas enters the shop and scolds Nabin for wasting such expensive items. Nabin tries to defend himself, telling that he's trying to make a new dish, but Kalidas does not listen to him and slaps him. Fast forward, Nabin can be seen at a big bungalow where the owner asks him to make a special sweet dish for her son-in-laws. Nabin agrees and delivers them a dish covered in mango pulp and having juice inside. All of the house owner's son-in-laws like the dish and they praise Nabin. Unfortunately, Kalidas gets to know that Nabin charged less for the dish and accuses him of making a loss and fires Nabin from the job. Kalidas also asks for the money that he lost, and Nabin's mother apologizes to Kalidas and somehow manages to return his money. After all this, Nabin's uncle gives Nabin the last warning to leave the house in 7 days. Without any objection, Nabin agrees to do so, and with his mother he leaves the house. In the next scene, Nabin and his mother rent a small house and start living there. After Kalidas fired him, no one in the market agrees to provide him with a job, and he begins working as a garbage collector. Nabin's mother feels ashamed of this and tells him that he should be a confectioner at any cost and should never divert from his dream. The following morning, Mash brings a businessman, Mr. Shandu, to meet Nabin. Shandu is greatly impressed by Nabin's ability to make new dishes and asks him if he would like to work for him as a partner. Nabin happily accepts the request, and Mash also decides to join him. Next, Nabin and Mash can be seen working for Shandu at his shop. Right then, a customer arrives there and provides some money to Shandu in advance to make a unique sweet dish at his son's marriage ceremony. Nabin and Mash have no idea about the order while Shandu takes the money and flees the shop. In the next scene, being a granddaughter of a confectioner, Kirat receives a marriage proposal from Nabin's family. At first she gets angry, but when she hears Nabin's name she instantly agrees. A few days later the two get married and become happy to be together. Even on their first night after marriage, Nabin tries to make the dish requested him earlier, but fails. When Nabin returns to the shop, he witnesses a large mass gathering around the same customer who provided some money in advance, accuses them of betraying him and not preparing the sweets on time. Nabin inquires with Mahesh and gets to know that Shandu has taken all the money and is out of contact. Nabin then starts searching for him and finds Shandu at a bar. He informs him about the situation outside, but Shandu shows no concern about it. Instead, he mentions that he has spent the money on buying opium. Hearing this, Nabin cries in front of everyone as he has no way of making the sweets as per the customer's demands. Fortunately, this grabs the attention of the bar's owner Malkajan, who gives him some money and wishes him good luck. Following this, Nabin returns to the shop along with Shandu and starts preparing the new dish. Right then, someone arrives to meet Nabin, so he leaves, but not before asking Shandu to look after the sweet boiling syrup. However, the latter accidentally spills some opium into the syrup. Shandu tries his best to take the opium out of the syrup, but fails. Afraid, he does not tell anything to his partners about the accident. The next day, Nabin makes sweets using the same syrup and distributes them at the marriage ceremony of one of his customers. To his bad luck, all the guests vomit blood because of the excessive amount of opium present in the sweets. As a result, Nabin is beaten up and his shop is also closed. After the incident, Nabin stays inside his house sad and sullen. Mahesh visits him at this time and asks him to start a new shop. Seeing her husband feel defeated, Kiradmani also motivates him and gives Nabin her jewelry to get some money and start a new shop. After all the encouragement, Nabin finally opens his own confectionery shop just opposite Kalidas. As a year passes by, but Nabin's shop fails to attract customers. The whole day he keeps on trying to make Rosogolla but ruins it in every attempt. Seeing Nabin less serious about the shop and the family drowning in debt, Kiradmani yells at him, calling him lazy. However, this only infuriates Nabin, who walks out of the shop and joins a pilgrimage group to sing at a foreigner's mansion. Surprisingly, the foreigner Mr. Paulo is impressed by Nabin's singing ability and offers him a sweet cake made by him. Nabin likes the softness of the cake and inquires about the recipe. Paulo shows him the entire recipe of making soft cottage cheese, and seeing this, Nabin decides to follow the same process to make Rosogollas. Later in the evening, Nabin returns home and apologizes to his mother and Kiradmani for running away. He then unites with Mash and begins following Paulo's process of making soft cottage cheese. After making cheese, he successfully makes the Rosogolla. Nabin takes Kiradmani to the place they met before and lets her take a bite of Rosogolla. As soon as she does so, Kiradmani smiles and assures that the dish contains all the qualities that she described before. Everyone in the family loves the Rosogolla, and the next day Nabin puts it out for sale at his shop. But to his bad luck, no customers show up. After waiting for a certain amount of time, a father-son duo stops at Nabin's shop asking him to provide his thirsty son with water. However, instead of providing water, Nabin gives them some Rosogollas and requests them to try it before drinking water. Fortunately, the son likes the Rosogollas, compelling his father to taste one and buy all the Rosogollas present in the shop. After this, Nobin witnesses a surge in business and the people of the town start going crazy for his rosogollas. He then visits everyone who helped him in his difficult days and feeds them his rosogollas. Nobin also teaches a lot of confectioners the recipe for making the special dish. In the next scene, the cunning Kalidas invites a patent registrar Amritlal Banig and asks him to patent the rosogollas by his name. However, the servant who brings the rosogollas to Amritlal mentions that Nobin taught him to make them. Hearing this, Amritlal walks away from there and instead approaches Kiradmani. He describes to her the idea of the patent and suggests that she inform her husband about it. Sadly, when she tells Nobin, he instantly despises the idea, prompting an angry Kiradmani to leave him and head to her parents' house. Time passes by and one day nobody heads to his longtime nemesis Kalidas with some rosogollas. The latter does not want to taste it, but when Nobin requests politely, he agrees. Surprisingly, Kalidas becomes emotional as he's taken aback by the perfect taste of the sweet. He apologizes to Nobin for whatever differences they had and also requests to learn the recipe of the dish. Being the good guy that he is, Nobin immediately agrees to the request. In the following scene, a beggar-like man approaches Nobin's shop and requests them to provide him with some food. Nobin happily welcomes the man inside and feeds him. Surprisingly, the man turns out to be Shandu, who fled after Nobin got beaten up for poisoning the sweets. Shandu finally confesses that he accidentally dropped opium in the sweet syrup and that he had no courage to tell nobody about it. Surprisingly, instead of being angry, Nobin forgives him and remembers the sweet dish he prepared that day. He names the dish after Shandu's real name, Vaikunta Ganguly. In the last scene, Nobin visits Kiradmani at her mother's house and takes the Vaikunta Bog with him to woo her. At first, Kiradmani refuses to talk, but when she tastes the Vaikunta Bog, she becomes happy and forgives Nobin. The movie ends with Kiradmani asking her husband about the ingredients of Vaikunta Bog and Nobin replying that it can